but that's gone. I promise y'all will still be invited to Mar-a-Lago if you say that it is wrong that children were zip-tied and that American people, American citizens, were detained without any warrant or suspicion.
Briefly detained? In an effort to get 37 Trinidad members?
So tell me,
what you're suggesting is that no enforcement can take place.
Would you be okay being detained so that the gang members, would you be okay with your rights being violated and you be held until 3 a.m. with your family member not knowing why? Is that okay? Because that's not okay with me.
Everybody here seems to believe that if you're Trinidad Aragua, you can go hide in an apartment building, and because there are other people there, you just get to be left alone.
Things got intense tonight on CNN's Newsnight as Van Lathan went head-to-head with Scott Jennings over the shocking ICE raids that rocked Chicago. We're talking Black Hawk helicopters, flashbangs, and families being zip-tied, even U.S. citizens caught in the chaos. Van Lathan and Abby Phillip didn't hold back, calling out the inhumane tactics and demanding accountability for the trauma inflicted on innocent communities. Meanwhile, Scott Jennings tried to justify the operation, but the facts and Van's fire left him completely cornered. So let's dive in and watch how Van Lathan shuts down Scott Jennings in this heated exchange.
Donald Trump wanted American cities to be training grounds, and ICE listened. In Chicago, in the middle of the night, federal agents stormed an apartment building. Black Hawk helicopters, flashbangs, military-style trucks, all used in the raid. Now, witnesses say everyone was detained, no matter their status. Children were zip-tied together, separated from their parents. And the feds say that they arrested dozens of gang members. Also in the city, Charlie Kirk's group was given a front-row seat to a raid inside a Walmart.
Amazing. Secretary Noem was here. They rolled up a couple of guys, and it's rowdy. There's a lot of people around. Everyone's filming. The Secretary of Homeland Security is right now doing raids at Walmart.
So, as forewarned, I mean, we have a situation in which American cities are at the center of this ICE crackdown, and there's indiscriminate use of force against Americans, non-Americans, people here legally, people here illegally. And on the right, nobody seems to care. In fact, they love it.
I saw a video from a local station in Chicago, and residents of a community there were describing an ICE raid and like what they saw. Two things struck me. One, they were talking about things that happened to them. They were talking about how they were treated in this ICE raid. These are the people that, I guess, by virtue of being born here in America, are entitled to being treated like human beings. The second thing is that they were all black. And I'm gonna say something, we saw this coming. Mm-hmm. We knew the neighborhoods where these ICE raids would take place. We knew that a lot of these things wouldn't happen in Beverly Hills or in Coconut Grove or any of those places like that. We knew that there would be collateral damage, that there would be trauma that would be inflicted on our communities. We knew that people would be detained, scared. We knew that children would have to see things that they shouldn't have to see. And all of this for political theater so that we look tough on immigration for everyone. It's a horror show. And I do think if it hasn't already happened, that it'll be something that even the most conservative of Americans will get tired of seeing human beings treated this way. At least that's my hope.
The one neighbor said the kids were crying. They looked very distraught. I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner because they were bringing kids down too, had them zip tied to each other. Saying that there were trucks, military-style vans used to separate adults from kids. What's going on?
I haven't seen any of this, so I certainly am not aware of particular neighborhoods that are targeted. Obviously, I support them finding and arresting people who are here illegally. And in the community they're in, again, I can't justify, I haven't seen which communities that they're targeting.
Well, one detail that's been left out is that they were targeting Trinidad Aragua. And so Trinidad Aragua is a violent transnational gang. They send illegal immigrants here to the United States. They traffic drugs, they traffic people, they commit violence. They inflict misery everywhere they go. And 37 people were arrested. That was the purpose of the raid, the targeting of Tren de Aragua, some of the most violent people in our hemisphere. And when they come here, nothing good happens. That was the point.
So if it was targeting, I don't think anybody has a problem with targeting. Right. When you clear out an apartment building and you zip tie children and you arrest and detain everyone. Scott, hold on, Scott. You and me, we're talking here.
Look, Van and Abby are absolutely right to be outraged here, because this isn't just about enforcing immigration law, it's about how that law is enforced and who ends up paying the price. Every time ICE does one of these show of force raids, it's the same story. Armored trucks, helicopters, flashbangs, and yet somehow it's always happening in black and brown neighborhoods. And let's be real, this isn't new. Back in 2018 and 2019, similar raids in Mississippi and Texas rounded up hundreds of people, and later investigations showed many of them weren't even criminals. They were parents, workers, community members. Meanwhile, the truly violent cases, the ones that supposedly justify this kind of operation, make up a small fraction of arrests. So when Scott tries to defend it by saying it's about taking down gangs like Tren de Aragua, he's ignoring the bigger picture. These raids are used as political optics. They make for great headlines. ICE cracks down on crime, but in practice, they terrify entire communities, traumatize children, and create more distrust between law enforcement and the public. And honestly, if this happened in places like Beverly Hills or the Hamptons, people would lose their minds. But because it's happening in working class or minority areas, suddenly it's acceptable. That's not law and order. That's selective enforcement dressed up as patriotism.
Okay? If they arrest children, they arrest everyone, citizens and non-citizens, for hours, detain them, deprive them of their liberty, for no matter how long. You are fine with that.
They didn't arrest children, but...
I didn't say they arrested them. They put them in zip ties. But if that makes a difference to you, go ahead.
Here's what makes a difference to me. If the federal government knows that there is a nest of Tren de Aragua in a city like Chicago, they have a responsibility. They have an obligation to go get them. It is unfortunate, to answer your question, that there are children put in harm's way by these violent gangs. But that is going to be the reality.
Is it unfortunate or is it a violation of their rights, is the question? Because, I mean, in this country, we have rights against searches and illegal searches and
You're suggesting these children should be effectively human shields for Tren de Aragua, and I don't agree with that.
Hold on, I want to make it clear. I know that Tren de Aragua and gangs and whatever, it's a catch-all to treat people however you want, to go in there and shred the Constitution or whatever else it is that you want to do. What I'm asking you is this. Do you think that children should have been zip-tied and pulled out of an apartment complex and traumatized like that? Yes or no?
I don't think children should be put in harm's way by transnational gangs.
Just answer the question. Yes or no? Do you think that children...
I don't accept the premise of your question.
I'm asking
the government's not putting children in harm's way. Tren de Aragua...
Real calm now. Real calm. Like
they're the ones putting children in harm's way.
Gentlemen and gentlemen, we have a responsibility for the way we treat people with the power that we have here in America. And we have a standard that we should treat human life with. And I'm asking you very clearly, concisely, should children be treated that way? Does Scott Jennings like that?
I don't accept the premise of your question.
All right, cool.
I don't believe that the premise of your question is accurate. I would ask you back. Should children be allowed to live in an apartment building with Tren de Aragua? Should the entire community of Chicago have to live with Tren de Aragua because they hide behind these children?
But here's the thing.
That's my question.
I think the answer to that is clear. No, they should not be put in harm's way. But the difference is in this situation is I don't want to be Tren de Aragua. I don't want my law enforcement to act like Tren de Aragua. That is the distinction.
Do you want to leave it? Do you just want to leave it and say, well, they have kids in there, let's just move on?
No, but can't law enforcement figure out a way? I don't think this is the first time children have been in an environment where dangerous people have been around them. And I'm most certain that in most of those circumstances, those children aren't zip tied and carried out like animals. What I am wondering is, okay, let's put this fact pattern on any other placement. Let's put it on a school, right? What if there was a gang member in a school? And by this calculation, it would seem like the children in the school, in order to get that one gang member or two gang members,
would get.
It's not one gang member. It's 37 people in an apartment building.
Let's say there's 5.
It's a large apartment building. That's part of the
You can really feel the frustration here. And honestly, it's justified. Van isn't just talking about one isolated raid, he's pointing to a pattern that's been playing out for years. When the government starts detaining entire households, citizens, legal residents, and yes, even kids, just to get to a few bad actors, that's a constitutional red flag. Because let's be honest, this isn't how law enforcement handles operations in wealthy or suburban areas. If there were suspected criminals in an upscale high-rise, you wouldn't see kids zip-tied and marched out at gunpoint. The reason this keeps happening in poor or minority neighborhoods is because those communities are treated as disposable. And that's what Van is really getting at, accountability. Nobody's saying don't arrest dangerous people. Of course, gangs like Tren de Aragua are a problem, but in America, the government is supposed to have limits. That's what separates us from the very kind of lawlessness we claim to be fighting. The ACLU and Human Rights Watch have both documented ICE raids where children were handcuffed or left without parents for hours, and no one faced consequences. That's not collateral damage. That's systemic negligence. So when Scott Jennings dodges the question, when he refuses to just say, yes, that was wrong, that silence says everything. Because if you can't even acknowledge that traumatizing children is unacceptable, maybe you've lost sight of what law and order is supposed to mean in a democracy.
Fact pattern here. I mean, here's another one from our reporting. Tenants said it appears everyone in the building was detained by federal officers, including U.S. citizens. It was scary, said one, because I had never had a gun in my face. That person lives in the building. They asked my name and my date of birth and asked me, did I have any warrants? I told them, no, I didn't. Fisher, this person says, she was handcuffed anyway before being released around 3 a.m. and was told anyone with outstanding warrants, even if it was unrelated to immigration, would not be released. So again, like people live in apartment buildings all over this country.
I promise that.
Is that where you should go?
Wait a second.
Should I just go to an apartment building and hide?
Wait. I'm talking about the way that citizen of this country was treated. By the way, I just want to be clear. I think that everybody that's created in the image of God should be treated with respect. And I thought that part of the American ideal was that, but that's gone. I promise y'all will still be invited to Mar-a-Lago if you say that it is wrong that children were zip-tied and that American people, American citizens, were detained without any warrant or suspicion.
Briefly detained? In an effort to get 37 Tren de Aragua members?
So tell me,
what you're suggesting is that no enforcement can take place.
Would you be okay being detained so that the gang members, would you be okay with your rights being violated and you be held until 3 a.m. with your family member not knowing why? Is that okay? Because that's not okay with me.
Everybody here seems to believe that if you're Tren de Aragua, you can go hide in an apartment building, and because there are other people there, you just get to be left alone. That is not a reasonable enforcement position.
There's another option here, and it's actually an option that's utilized by law enforcement every single day in this country. When they are looking for violent people, they go look for those violent people. They do not subject the people around those violent people who have nothing to do with them with arrest, with guns in their faces, with being searched, with being zip-tied and handcuffed and detained. Every day in America, law enforcement does their jobs, and they don't do it like this. So why is suddenly this okay?
Every day in America, you're not necessarily dealing with the most violent people in the hemisphere.
Yes,
we're not.
That's who is living in this country.
Scott, there are violent people who are right here in this country, American citizens. They are in gangs. They were born here. Their parents were born here. Their grandparents were born here.
Believe me, we know.
Those people are dealt with by law enforcement every day. Again, it's a real basic question. If you lived in an apartment building and there happened to be somebody who was guilty of a terrible crime in that building, and law enforcement barged in, guns blazing, and put every single person in that apartment building under arrest, you would be fine with that, including you and your family.
Not everybody is under arrest. They arrested 37 people. They arrested 37. You said everybody. It's not. It's 37 people.
This person was sleeping in their bed, and they were detained. They were put in handcuffs and detained until
Neither you nor I was there.
Neither
you nor I were there. But I know this. Now 37
you and your family,
violent people are now off the street.
Scott, you and your family, you are in an apartment building. You and your family, you would be fine with your liberty being held up, your kids, your wife, your children, being detained for any amount of time because somebody in that building was a criminal, you'd be fine with that?
You are vastly oversimplifying what's happening
Okay.
here. There are
I think
scores
sometimes
of
we have
illegal
to-
immigrants
I
in the
think
building.
sometimes we have to simplify things so that we actually
many of them are
understand
violent.
what we're talking about. Because I do think that this is a problem now for the rest of the country.
What's wild about this debate is how easily Scott Jennings dismisses what's happening as just enforcement. But when US citizens, people born here paying taxes, going about their lives, are zip-tied, handcuffed, and held for hours without a warrant, that's not enforcement. That's a constitutional failure. And this isn't a one-time thing. There's data showing ICE and federal task forces have repeatedly detained citizens during raids. A 2020 GAO report even found that ICE wrongfully detained hundreds of US citizens over the last decade. Hundreds. That's not an accident, that's a pattern. What Van and Abby are getting at here is simple. It's not about ignoring crime. It's about how you enforce the law. The Constitution doesn't say rights for citizens unless there's a gang nearby. You don't suspend civil liberties because it's inconvenient. Law enforcement does targeted arrests every single day. They don't storm entire buildings with helicopters and military trucks unless they're trying to make a political statement. And honestly, when Scott says people are oversimplifying, it sounds like a dodge. Because this isn't complicated. If your government can detain innocent families without due process, you've already lost the moral ground you claim to stand on. So siding with Van and Abby here isn't about partisanship. It's about principle. Either we uphold the Constitution for everyone, or it's only a matter of time before it stops protecting any of us. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.